Global Trade and Diplomacy. Unpacked, a deep dive into a week of high-stakes negotiations. Hello and welcome to your in-depth global news analysis. This week, the international stage has been a hive of activity, marked by pivotal shifts in trade relations and complex diplomatic maneuvers. The Trump administration's announcement of a significant trade deal with China has sent ripples across global markets and sparked a wide spectrum of analysis and debate. We'll be exploring this multifaceted development in detail. Concurrently, the intricate dance of tariff policies, their immediate economic repercussions, and the strategies behind them continue to fuel discussions among experts and a public eager for clarity. To provide a comprehensive understanding, we will also journey behind the curtain, examining the high-stakes negotiations and strategic thinking that culminated in these landmark agreements, drawing directly from the voices at the center of these events. Part 1. Breakthroughs on multiple fronts. The China deal. Middle East engagements and shifting peace talks. The banner headline this week is undoubtedly the Trump administration's declaration of a trade deal successfully reached with China. This announcement came after what President Trump hailed as great progress during meetings held in Switzerland. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, alongside Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, confirmed that substantial progress has been achieved in these very important trade talks, with further details promised for release tomorrow. Secretary Bessent also noted the president declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs, and we're confident that the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help us to work toward resolving that national emergency. Officials have hinted that the framework of this deal might mirror the US-UK trade agreement, which notably involved reductions in tariffs on aluminum, steel, and cars. North Dakota. Senator John Hoeven characterized this as a very encouraging and important first step, acknowledging that while a full deal isn't done, having the first-string negotiators like Greer and Bessent involved signifies real progress and a framework to get to a deal. This trade development unfolds as President Trump is set to embark on his first major overseas trip of his second term, a significant diplomatic mission to the Middle East. His itinerary includes visits with leaders from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, commencing Tuesday. It's noteworthy, as reported by Lucas Tomlinson live from Riyadh, that upon President Trump's return to the White House, his initial call to a foreign leader was to Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, mirroring his first-term pattern of making Saudi Arabia his first official overseas visit. Parallel to these trade and Middle Eastern diplomatic activities, the U.S. is actively engaged in other critical negotiations. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff was in neighboring Oman for another round of nuclear talks with Iranian officials concerning Iran's nuclear program. Both American and Iranian sides have touted progress from these discussions and have committed to meeting again, marking their fourth such encounter. Adding a profoundly human dimension to the week's news, Hamas made a late announcement stating they would release Edan Alexander, a 21-year-old from New Jersey, who served in the Israeli military, and is believed to be the last living American hostage held in Gaza. This release is reportedly scheduled for Tuesday, the same day President Trump is due to arrive in Saudi Arabia. While this is hailed as very good news and a moment deeply hoped for, Israel has clarified that there will be no ceasefire during this exchange. The complex web of international diplomacy also saw potential shifts regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed direct peace talks with Ukraine to be hosted in Turkey this week in an effort to end more than 3 years of intense fighting. President Trump, utilizing his platform on Truth Social, posted a message urging Ukraine to agree to this meeting immediately to end the bloodbath, a statement that appears to represent a softening of his previous demands for a 30-day ceasefire before any talks could commence. In response, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced he is prepared to meet Putin and will be waiting for him in Turkey on Thursday, though he continues to advocate for a ceasefire. David Webb, analyzing the situation, noted that Putin's motives are complex, possibly leveraging Russia's significant influence in Turkey, a NATO member, to hedge against the alliance. Zelensky, meanwhile, faces his own internal challenges in Ukraine, including a fractured government, a lack of infrastructure, and pressure from his hard-right flank, making the prospect of stopping the bloodshed appealing, provided he can navigate these domestic political waters. Lydia Hu commented that current progress suggests the American First policy is working as European leaders, after meeting with Zelensky, are now proposing support for a ceasefire and peace brokering directly to Trump, fulfilling his desire for European nations to take more responsibility for regional peace. Molly Line highlighted Zelensky's direct challenge to Putin, quoting Zelensky, "Personally, I hope this time Putin won't be looking for an excuse as to why he can't make it." The situation remains one of many balls up and being juggled all over the globe right now. As these multifaceted diplomatic efforts unfold across continents, the economic implications of the U.S.-China trade accord, particularly the adjustments in tariff policies, are igniting fervent discussion and detailed analysis among market watchers and policy experts. Part 2. Dissecting the deal. Tariff dynamics, market reactions, and economic outlooks. The U.S.-China agreement to temporarily lower tariffs for the next 90 days, a temporary truce, as some have called it, has injected a wave of optimism into financial markets. Larry Kudlow, reacting to the news, sounded pretty optimistic, noting the tariff reset from 145 to 30 as a positive sign that calmer heads are prevailing, and that we are talking to China. That's a good thing, and the stock market is saying terrific, keep it up. Indeed, the Dow Jones Industrial Average saw a significant rally, reaching session highs and notably recovering all selling losses to move higher than Liberation Day levels. Brian Brenberg of The Big Money Show interpreted this market buoyancy as a sign that those who held on and didn't panic are now in good shape. More profoundly, he suggested it reflects a regaining of trust and understanding about what the president's doing, even with 30% tariffs still active on Chinese goods. Uncertainty is getting pulled out of this equation, Brenberg stated, arguing that this stability, combined with potential continued deregulation and a significant tax cut, could lead to a really great second half of the year if the China situation remains stable. However, the enthusiasm is not universal. Robert Wolf, former economic advisor to President Obama, while expressing happiness over the tariff reset and agreeing with Larry Kudlow on its importance, offered a more cautious perspective. He argued that the market's recovery simply signifies a return to the status quo before the imposition of broader tariffs, reminding viewers that we had the 20% fentanyl tariff on China even during the Biden administration. The 10% across the board went to everyone, so we're actually right where we should be. Wolf supports the 90-day pause, wishing it were a 180-day one, and emphasized the critical need to find a sustainable way to deal with our frenemies on this. And China is the biggest frenemy we have. He reiterated the common Republican argument voiced by figures like Steve Moore that broad tariffs essentially function as a tax on the consumer in a 70% consumer-driven U.S. economy, which is why recession fears had been prominent. The question of whether President Trump was letting China off the hook with this temporary pause was put directly to him. His response was confident. "Yeah, I think they're going to follow through. I think they want it very badly. I think they want the deal very badly." He also clarified, "Again, this doesn't include the steel tariffs that I put on a long time ago. Now we have a thriving steel industry. It'll be thriving much more with what we're doing because this is the next level." Supporters of the administration's strategy contend that critics are attempting to have it both ways, decrying the initial high tariffs as excessive while simultaneously labeling the subsequent de-escalation for negotiation as a sign of weakness. The counter-argument is that the initial enormous tariffs successfully got the world's attention, and the subsequent uncertainty created the space for everybody to come to the table. Chill. If a momentary sort of blip we had in the market is the price to pay to get people to the table for better deals, who's going to say no to that? Looking forward, if this trade truce leads to a semblance of business as usual, allowing small businesses to plan for back-to-school and Christmas shopping, a vibrant market could indeed return. However, Brenberg offered a final thought. It's not going to be business as usual. Okay? It's going to be a different kind of business. To me, the story in 2025 is going to be growth when Congress gets this tax bill through and businesses have a really strong incentive. And don't forget regulations. The path to this tariff truce and the broader trade discussions was anything but straightforward. To fully grasp the current state of affairs, it's crucial to understand the intricate sequence of events and strategic decisions that led to these negotiations. Part 3. The Road to Rapprochement. Inside the U.S.-China trade negotiations. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer, speaking in his first interview after returning from the high-stakes meetings in Geneva, offered a detailed look inside these China trade negotiations. He began by highlighting that there's been a lot of work behind the scenes that went on before we had these meetings, outreach official and unofficial, between the two sides, as we were feeling each other out, seeing if there's a way to move forward. The situation escalated significantly when, as Greer recounted, President Trump declared reciprocal tariffs. On April 2nd, he assigned China a tariff of 34%, and everyone else said that they wanted to negotiate with us. They did not retaliate or did not implement retaliation. Everyone except for China. China went ahead and they implemented 34%. This direct retaliation prompted further upward adjustments from the U.S., as the president needed to make sure that his action was going to work, leading to a cycle of escalation that ultimately necessitated a heart-to-heart with the Chinese side, and the intensive groundwork for the recent meetings which yielded a very pragmatic outcome. Ambassador Greer directly addressed widespread criticism and headlines suggesting the administration was backing away from an untenable tariff position, or was forced back on your heels by the Wall Street response and by the business response. Laura, the critics, we keep disproving them so quickly, they just can't keep up, he stated. He reiterated that President Trump's actions are consistent with his long-stated campaign goals. His entire campaign, he said he wanted to put a 10% global tariff on the world, with higher tariffs on China around 50–60%. And guess where we are today? All in on China, it's about 50%, and it's 10% all the world. So he's doing exactly what he said. The initial sky-high tariffs, Greer explained, were a direct consequence of Chinese retaliation, which was disproportionate and inappropriate, but through very clear-eyed and realistic discussions, things were brought back to where we need to go. When confronted with skepticism from figures like former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who commented on CNN that it's President Trump who blinks, China didn't make any consequential or significant change, though he applauded the corrective action, and China expert Gordon Chang, who termed it essentially a win for China, Greer stood firm. He clarified the composition of the current tariff structure. China really was the first target of President Trump in 2018. He imposed tariffs of about 25% on most goods coming in from China. Those were still in place. Earlier this year, he put on tariffs of 20% on fentanyl. Then he put on the 34%. With China now qualifying for the 90-day pause, it faces a 10% tariff, but Greer emphasized, if things don't work out, those tariffs can go back up. The cumulative 50% figure is reached by counting these pre-existing tariffs that the Biden administration did not lift. So when you look at the world, President Trump has imposed significant tariffs on China, substantially more than they have, Greer asserted. A critical component of the recent agreement, according to Ambassador Greer, is China's pledge to lift its countermeasures, which included restrictions on the export of vital materials, like rare earths and magnets crucial for U.S. manufacturers. When the administration put the 34% on China, China retaliated with 34% plus other countermeasures. Our mission this weekend was not only to get the tariffs down to a more rational rate, but also to require the Chinese to remove their countermeasures, which they've agreed to do. He added a stern warning: if they don't do those things, we're going to be back in a different situation. But I expect they will remove them. Regarding President Trump's optimism about China's adherence to the agreement, especially given past experiences, Greer outlined a two-step approach. First, we have the agreement of this weekend, which is to have them lift their tariffs and lift their countermeasures, which is something concrete, quantifiable, observable. That's going to happen this week. And then the next step is to enter into talks, broadly speaking, to see if they'll open up their economy. While acknowledging that opening China's economy is a long-term project where past promises haven't been delivered, Greer concluded that President Trump is speaking with power and in a way that the Chinese Communist Party understands. It's not just soft words like other administrations have used. It's real power and real leverage that the president's wielding. The ultimate goal, he reiterated, remains focused on U.S. jobs and reducing the trade deficit. Considering the intricate balance of imposing tariffs to gain leverage versus the potential impact on domestic consumers and industries, where do you think the line should be drawn in international trade negotiations to best serve a nation's long-term economic health and its citizens' welfare? We invite you to share your perspectives in the comments section below.